Okay, Joe, we were talking today on Near FM to talk mainly about the 4-day week Ireland campaign that was launched recently. As this is my first interview with a representative from Fórsa, though, can you start off by telling me a bit about how Fórsa as an organisation came into being?
Yes, of course. So Fórsa are the largest public service trade union in Ireland. We came into being in January of 2018, so relatively recently, and it was an amalgamation of three unions: the former Impact Union, which represented about 60,000 members, and the former CPSU and PSCU, which are two civil service unions that represented about 10,000 members each. So Fórsa, in its current form, represents about 80,000 members, and we'd be the second largest union in the country after SIP2.
I love your organisation's name, Fórsa. I think it's great, Okay, Joe, to move on to talk about 4-day week Ireland, you are the third person I am interviewing about the campaign, but I understand that you are actually the coordinator of the campaign. Can you give us a summary of what 4-day Ireland means to you?
Yeah, of course. So I suppose just to give you a little bit of background, this came out of an international conference that we in Fórsa held last November on the future of working time. And I suppose that itself came off the back of a number of international debates and coverage around the issue of the shorter working week, a large number of businesses in different countries who have done this in recent years. And I suppose we were watching that debate closely and felt that was something that wasn't really being discussed here in Ireland, and it needed to be. And I suppose following on from the very positive response that we got to that conference, we brought together what we felt were a number of groups that represented different aspects of the idea of the shorter working week. So we brought together the National Women's Council from the perspective of gender equality, Friends of the Earth from the perspective of the environment. And really the campaign that we launched on the 27th of September is about calling for a gradual, steady and managed transition to a shorter working week for all workers in the public and private sector. And what we're saying is that should be done with no loss of either pay or productivity.
Am I right in saying that there are different ways in which organisations can structure a 4-day week?
Well, you are. We've seen it done in different companies, where some companies do it where the number of hours in the working day remains the same, so it's about a 32-hour week. We've seen some companies who have done it where there's slightly longer work days and it's a 36-hour week. But really what we're calling for is a move towards a shorter working week. And I think it's important to state that this is something which, to our mind, is a medium-term ambition for this to become the standard work arrangement across the economy. Now, that doesn't mean to say that if this came into being, that everyone would have a 3-day weekend or that everyone would have Friday off. Obviously, the current situation is that the 5-day week or the 9 to 5 is the standard work arrangement, but it's obviously not the only work arrangement. And there will continue to be a need for flexibility for different employments, different sectors, different workers. So if you take, for example, IndieCube, or a company in Wales who have done this, they've introduced a 4-day week, but they've also given their staff the option that if they want to work the same number of hours over a compressed 5-day week, that they could do that. And that suits some of their staff for childcare reasons and other domestic reasons. So really, that's what we're talking about when we talk about a 4-day week. And we believe that this is something that's achievable in the context of the rapid technological change that's coming down the line. This idea of the fourth industrial revolution, of automation, of artificial intelligence. We think it's very important that in preparing for that future of work, that a big part of that conversation is how do we share those benefits with workers. And as it has been throughout history, we think working time is a very good starting point for that discussion.
The advantages of a 4-day week, I think, most of them are fairly obvious. There are great advantages of it, and it's very good, I think, as well for staff's mental health, I think. Do you?
Yeah, so I suppose some of the obvious benefits are, most of the examples internationally would suggest that staff are healthier, they're happier, they're more focused, they're more motivated, they're more energized. So certainly in terms of workplace well-being and workplace morale, it has been shown to have very positive outcomes, both in the examples here in Ireland, such as the company ICE in Galway who've introduced this, and also in terms of the international examples like Perpetual Guardian in New Zealand. There are other additional benefits in that we believe that this can be something that's good for business productivity. Again, the evidence would suggest that that actually productivity can be maintained or even enhanced. under a shorter working week. And as I mentioned earlier, it's something that we think can be good for the environment. The research here would suggest that for every 1 hour reduction in working hours, you see a 0.8 reduction in carbon emissions. So in other words, if we reduce the working week by 20%, that would see a reduction in carbon emissions by 16% as a result of less commuting time and less energy use in buildings. And I suppose in the current discussion around climate change and the need for a very significant transition in how our society and how our economy functions in order to be able to respond to that grave threat that there is to our environment, we think a 4-day week can play a very critical role within that.
What is the feedback like you're getting on the campaign, Joe?
Well, we've had very positive feedback in terms of the response. We've had positive coverage around the launch itself. We've been speaking to a number of different businesses here in Ireland who are interested in introducing this or trialling this in their own company. And our intention is to provide supports and guidance and resources for businesses who want to introduce this, and also to, I suppose, lean on companies who have experienced this and have done it before in terms of providing them advice as to how to go about doing it. I mean, really what our campaign is about trying to change this false narrative that's out there that there's some kind of a correlation between working long hours and having high productivity. And all the evidence and the research out there would suggest that that's not the case. If you look at the likes of the Netherlands, Denmark, some of the countries with the highest productivity in Europe, they also have some of the shortest working hours. And then on the flip side, some of the least productive countries like the UK and Greece have some of the longest hours. So we want to change this idea that working long hours is some kind of a badge of honour, and I suppose to challenge the always-on work culture that has seeped into some parts of Irish society in recent years. And we think it's important to champion caring work, community work, leisure time and family time as things that have a real value within society, and that having a better work-life balance can help to deliver upon all of these things.
Okay, Joe, can you tell us what you the campaign have strategically in mind over the next few months or years with the campaign?
Well, I think if we're talking about how do we achieve a 4-day week within that medium-term time frame, so how can we make a 4-day week the standard work arrangement in the next decade within Ireland? And we think there's 3 ways that can be done. The first is through business leadership, so private businesses showing leadership on this issue, as a number have done already, and having competition within the labour market whereby companies can see the benefits of a 4-day week and offer this to their staff to try and gain a competitive advantage in trying to recruit staff. The second is the role of ourselves, trade unions, in terms of collective bargaining, introducing this as one of the core elements of our industrial and negotiating strategy in the coming years. And then the third, we think, is the government. As the largest employer in the state, as a very, very major purchaser, we think the government can show leadership in encouraging and facilitating this transition to a shorter working week. And that can be done through incentivising private business. It can be done in terms of how it deals with its own staff in the public sector, but it can also be done through legislation down the line if necessary. So they're the 3 areas. As a campaign, we're hoping to do a series of regional meetings right across the country in the coming months. We're going to be launching a social media campaign, and really we're trying to develop the coalition that we've built of trade unions, of businesses, of environmental groups, of academics, out further to involve more people and to try and build a movement towards a 4-day week in Ireland. But I suppose the last message that I have for your listeners is that all of the arguments that we've heard to date as to why a 4-day week won't work, that it's an unaffordable luxury, that it is something that wouldn't be feasible economically, all of those arguments are the same arguments that were used against the 5-day week or the 8-hour day, and we think in the same way as that we won the 5-day week and the 8-hour day, we can win the 4-day week for workers.